So I'm here to tell a story about ghosts. In the audience is the lovely and peerlessly talented Audra Williams, who tells a story I like very much about how we went to a ghost hunting class. If you haven't heard it, it's an amazing story. And we really did. We really did go to a ghost hunting class. And in the middle of this story, she mentions that I'm the only one of the four of us who went who has seen a ghost. This is true. I've actually seen 3 ghosts in my life, only one of which I am convinced is real. So I'm going to take you through the fake ghosts and then the real ghost. Now, see, the problem with the fact that I've seen a ghost, let alone 3, but the one that troubles me is that I don't actually believe in them at all. I really like ghost movies and like haunted house stories and horror movies, and I think the idea of ghosts as energy that repeats itself is interesting, but I don't fucking believe in ghosts like as a thing, except I saw one this one time. It troubles me. So the first ghost that I saw/experienced was supposedly the ghost of my grandfather. When I was 11, my grandfather died. This was my father's father, someone I had only met for the first time when I was about 7. We weren't terribly close. He was a quiet, sick man, and I don't think I ever saw him when he wasn't connected to a portable oxygen tank. Even though we weren't super close, he was my first experience with death. And the first time it had come close to me at all, and certainly the first time I had seen a body. When he died, my aunts called everybody over to the house before the funeral home got there, and he was just laid out on the table so we could spend some time with him for the last time. Possibly creepy, but at the time it was actually quite lovely. And generally speaking, his death was considered one of those peaceful, merciful ones. He had lived a long life, had been sick a long time, passed away quietly in his sleep. Now, my father is not a great human being and had a very difficult, challenging relationship with his own father, which I really hope isn't a moment of foreshadowing, because even though they weren't terribly close, he took this death incredibly hard. And like anything he took incredibly hard, he decided to take it out on those around him. In this particular case, in the form of leaving feathers in my bedroom and my little brother's, and when we asked about them, telling us that the ghost of our grandfather was haunting us. Like, that's a cool thing to tell an 11 and 8-year-old. So my little brother started to suffer from nightmares. Well, I just thought it was pretty cool that, like, I had some sort of ghost angel grandfather who was hanging around the house and, probably hanging out with me and whatever. And I would collect the feathers when they arrived. And I was just little enough that I bought it. I, super hardcore bought it. Until I started repeating the story about how my ghost grandfather was visiting us at school. I went to Catholic school. It didn't go over super well. My mother eventually found out, and she apparently ordered my father to tell us the truth, that there was no ghost of our grandfather haunting our family, which he dealt with by not doing that, but taking my brother and I aside and saying that he had talked to our ghost grandfather and convinced him to go back to heaven. Not the same as confessing to a child that you actually lied to them, but in that moment, there was something about that. I could already recognize the tone of bullshit in my father's voice, which I would become very familiar with over the coming years, so I knew it wasn't real. I was young enough to have believed him, but not old enough but not quite young enough that I couldn't, suss out the fact that this wasn't totally happening. So I gave up the idea. I was very quickly able to let go of the idea that I had actually been haunted. The second ghost that I experienced is a combination of a shitty ex-boyfriend and a little bit of hallucination. The Substory, contains 2 of my ex-boyfriends, unfortunately, only one of whom is dead. Dead boyfriend, the first, who I like to refer to as Voldemort, because I don't super like saying his name. had passed away relatively recently, within the past 6 months, and I was having a lot of trouble sleeping. I was having trouble sleeping to the point where I started to experience what are known in the biz as microsleeps, which is where you will just lose consciousness for a few seconds at a time, and sometimes you will dream, and sometimes you will hallucinate. So it was during this period of time when I was dating a shitty ex-boyfriend, the second, whose name is unfortunately the Gramlich. Like, come on, buddy, right? Like, since then, I have instituted a new rule in my life, which is I only date people with real human names. First name cannot be an article or title. But at the time, this rule had not been instituted. So I was brushing my teeth one night, and I had what I am sure is a moment of microsleep where, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, kind of blipped out for a second, and I heard with perfect clarity my very dead ex-boyfriend say my name directly behind me. And I like whip around, and of course there's nothing there because I'm in my apartment and everything is fine and I know exactly what happened and it's fine. It's fine. But I'm shaken. I'm pretty badly shaken. And my ex can tell when I come back to bed, and I sort of like explain what happened. It's like, oh, this moment, like I've been having, it's fine. I shake it off. I go to sleep. And I'm having a bad dream, and I manage to shake it off a little bit. And in the process of shaking it off, like, I'm suddenly convinced that someone is touching my foot and that there is someone standing at the foot of the bed. And in that moment, I'm able to kind of think around it for, one of the first times in this super spooky, really like mentally disorganized time that I'm having. I'm like, no, you're dreaming. There's nothing there. It's totally fine. There's nothing standing at the foot of your bed. Open your eyes and prove it to yourself. You'll be fine. So I open my eyes, and there is somebody standing at the foot of the bed. And in my partially asleep moment, it is my dead ex-boyfriend. This is how, this was the second time I viciously attacked my still living, unfortunately, ex-boyfriend with a pillow. And he will swear up and down that he wasn't trying to pretend to be the ghost of my dead ex-boyfriend, that he just happened to like be coming back to bed and like spookily standing at the foot of the bed and touching my foot like an asshole. But let's be real. It was him. So neither of those were real ghosts, obviously. Both of the other ghosts that I was even convinced for a second I had experienced were people fucking with me. This third one, though, it really bothers me. So very early on in the relationship with the Gramlich, it's so embarrassing, you guys, even saying it aloud. But it is good material, at least. So very early on, and by early on, I mean the very first time I ever went home with him, I woke up in the morning and walked through the kitchen in a towel and met his mother, who did not expect me to be in her kitchen, and I did not know he lived with his mother. So it was pretty awkward for everyone involved. So 2 or 3 weeks later, she was a relatively reasonable woman. We decided to have a do-over. It's like, hey, let's for sure pretend that you didn't definitely see a nipple like within 12 seconds of meeting me, and we'll just like have dinner like reasonable people and actually meet and talk, and total do-over. She was down with it. It was great. But I was a little bit nervous going over to the house, I think understandably, and I was like very focused on making a good second impression. Like I am a totally acceptable human being who can definitely like have dinner with you occasionally. And I walk in the house, and my ex goes directly in to say hi to the dogs in the kitchen. And the way that the house is set up, you walk in the front door, and there's a staircase immediately on the left. And then the right, there's a hallway, and then it opens up into the living room and the kitchen beyond and the rest of the house. So I'm standing kind of immediately inside, right at the foot of the stairs, taking my boots off, and I hear a little bark. And I know there's dogs in the house. I've met them. I thought I had met them all. But I look up, and there's a tiny gray dog at the top of the stairs. And so I immediately turn into a moron. Like, come on, baby. Hey, sweetie, come on, say hi to me. Come on. And, like, doing the dog voice and, like, clapping my hands and trying to get it to come down. And it is doing that thing where it would like to say hi to me, but it's scared, so it's sort of like hopping back and forth, like doing the little tiny dog hop, and it's got like a little ponytail, and it's very, very cute. And I continue like very loudly acting like an idiot while the dog is trying to figure out if it's going to come down or not. And eventually it decides no, it's too shy, and it turns and it runs down the hallway, and I hear like the little click of its fingernails as it goes all the way down the hallway. And I stand up to see my ex standing there, like, just staring at me. I'm like, what? And he says, what? Like, what are you talking to? And I explain, of course, I have been talking to the dog. He tells me all of the dogs are in the kitchen. Cassie's in the kitchen. Annie's in the kitchen. I'm like, no, the other dog. He's like, there's no other dog in the house. They're all in the kitchen. I'm like, there is another dog. Like, please, I am not stupid. I describe the tiny, adorable gray dog I just had an interaction with and almost made friends with. And he looks at me for a moment and leaves, goes to a mantelpiece, takes a photo, hands it to me, and shows me a picture of the gray dog. I'm like, yes, the dog that you have a picture of in your house. That would be the one that I saw. Why are you being so weird about this? He says, that's Oakley. That is my grandmother's dog. She has been dead for 6 years. Right? Like, oh, so I'm now in this situation in my life that I can't resolve necessarily, where I don't believe in ghosts, but I met a ghost Shih Tzu. And it was a very nice ghost Shih Tzu, and I think about Oakley sometimes, and I hope she's okay running back and forth down that hallway as long as that family lives there. But it's a very troubling thing, let me tell you, to not believe anything, and like pretty stalwartly not believe anything, and be pretty comfortable in your mental security and acuity of not believing a thing, and to have experienced it. So that's it for me. I have seen a ghost, but I don't believe in them.